we're still looking at the flagellum unspun, microscopic argument about whether or not evolution could have produced this species with such a complex organism or motor within itself, which operates seemingly by a thought process for that small bacterium to survive, eat, excrete, and so on. How could that have evolved? It's just far too complex. There has to be a designer. We're all the way down to this point here, left off last time. My answer, in the blue font, if a complex biochemical or other kind of system, something alive or not, cannot gradually evolve because the time involved, probability-wise, doing the math, would be greater than the supposed age of the universe, then it demands an intelligent designer because the probability of their evolving is too long, longer than the supposed age of the universe. And this is a small microbe. What about the more complex animals getting up to mammals and humans, fish, the porpoise, man? You add all that together, it's far longer than the universe there. So somebody had to design all of this, do you think? But he goes on to say, what even they acknowledge is that their entire scientific position rests upon a single assertion. No, it doesn't. This is just one example. That the living cell contains biochemical machines that are irreducibly complex. Actually, that's true, and that alone will resolve the problem of which is better, which is more plausible, an intelligent designer or billions and billions of years times billions to power. It's just impossible. Besides that, if evolution can be proved in some facet, it doesn't disprove intelligent designer. Both are plausible because how things evolve is invisible. We weren't there. We're not old enough. So we can only guess, make some educated guesses. Well, the more plausible is an intelligent designer. There are other assertions which creationists make as well. For example, the worldwide flood, of which is evidence is everywhere. We've got fossils on the top of mountain chains in Mount Everest. There are marine fossils. So evidence is everywhere on the planet, which testifies to a recent creation, which evidence would have destroyed the fossil evidence of evolution in a very short time if evolution was there. But the fossil record was actually created by the flood. If the fossil record was already there, and it's totally inconsistent around the world, so wherever you find a fossil record here, you find beings, living beings, that don't belong with one another in the same strata. Well, that's not my problem. Actually, what's resolved that is the waves in a worldwide flood would be huge and go at hundreds of miles an hour slamming into each other, and the ocean would be, at the bottom, would be so much pressure at 60 some odd pounds per cubic foot that things turn into instant rock. And if there's a living being in there, it's frozen into that rock. We have a fish eating another fish. That didn't take billions of years, so that rock strata low at the bottom actually happened instantly. Catastrophism. Right now, the evolutionists are even claiming catastrophism here and there to explain their inconsistencies. And anyway, there are other assertions which creationists make as well. For example, as I said, the worldwide flood, of which evidence is everywhere on the planet, testifies to a recent creation. Which evidence would have destroyed the fossil evidence of evolution in a very short time if there was evidence in the first place. And there wasn't. Actually, the waves created the fossil record, as I said, which thus demands an intelligent designer to create the universe so quickly. But one assertion at a time, please. And that's what we're doing here. Just because the article is about one particular bacteria, flagellum, doesn't mean that we hang our hats on that alone. There are millions of examples of human life and other kinds of forms of life that show that somebody had to design that. Darwin himself said in Special Organs, he couldn't figure out how the eye could have evolved. It had to have been in working order right then and there. But he says, because of the evil in the earth, I just won't believe it. Well, that's not a scientific conclusion. That's an emotional one. So the bacterial flagellum is the prime example of such a machine in the microscopic world, one of the innumerable examples. To refute one is not to refute them all. Each one must be adequately examined, which this article does not do. It just presumes. Such an assertion, he goes on to say, as we have seen, can be put to the test in a very direct way. If we are able to search and find an example of a machine with fewer protein parts contained within the flagellum, that's your mistake. You don't compare two things. You can't compare a Ford truck with a Toyota truck and say the Toyota is constructed differently, but the Ford is a basic Ford, has less material. Therefore, the Ford evolved into the Toyota. No, two separate factories. An intelligent designer designed both. So, the flagellum serves a purpose distinct from motility. The claim of irreducible complexity is refuted, he says. No, it's not. Not so, I say. An intelligent designer is not refuted just because he created a particular design with multi-purposes. You take that same flagellum and put it in another scenario, and it forms a different function. The Ford is different from a Toyota. I would think that what he did was rather intelligent and amazing, wouldn't you? The intelligent designer? Well, the author of this article goes on to say, as we have also seen, the flagellum does indeed contain such a machine, a protein secreting apparatus that carries out an important function even in species that lack the flagellum altogether. Different species, apples and orange. A scientific idea rises or fails on the weight of the evidence, and the evidence in the case of the bacterial flagellum is abundantly clear. So I respond, and the evidence is that a particular design has a number of variations in it, which performs a number of functions in a number of species. That's rather intelligent, don't you think? Does that refute an intelligent designer? No, not even if you can figure out that that species might evolve before the universe is old. Otherwise, there needs to be someone who can just do it faster, right? And we've already looked at the flagellum, and it takes too long. As an icon of anti-evolution, the flagellum has fallen. My answer? Only if you can provide the stages of evolution in this amazing microscopic engine that seems as complex as an automobile. The very existence of the type 3 secretory system shows that the bacterial flagellum is not irreducibly complex. Well, here's my point. More than one function of this system in more than one species is not what irreducibly complexity is referring to. How did that system evolve in the one species in view, stage by stage? Did you answer that? No. And how did that system evolve in the other species in view in the issue, and in how much time? Two different functions for a similar machine. That's very complex. If that time is longer than the universe is old, then look for another solution. You have not provided this all-important information. Every time he says something, he doesn't support it with evidence. And he also says, it also demonstrates more generally that the claim of irreducible complexity is scientifically meaningless, constructed as it is upon the flimsiest of foundations. The assertion that because science has not yet found selectable functions for the components of a certain structure, it never will. I say, I'm going to stick with what is the best explanation we have so far until something better comes along. So far, we have a very complex universe in which you have not fully explained every detail for over 150 years. You haven't come up with a missing link or how things are linked together from one species to the next. It appears so far to be left up to an intelligent designer over a very, very short period of time, especially because of the overwhelming evidence of a worldwide flood that would have destroyed the fossil record if there was one and produced its own because of that water and sediment. Because of all of that water and sediment. I got the light sunlight on the screen here. A recent creation demands an intelligent designer. So this article goes on to say, in the final analysis, as the claims of intelligent design fall by the wayside, I don't know where the falling is, its advocates are left with a single remaining tool with which to battle against the rising tide of scientific evidence. We have seen no scientific evidence, just a lot of gibberish. Yeah, this thing is similar, like a Ford, is similar to a Toyota. One didn't evolve in another, and they had to be created by an intelligent designer, mankind. These things, mankind cannot seem to put together something as complex as this, especially on such a minutiae little microscopic level. And this guy has not shown any reason why you should think that the flagella and the bacteria, number one, could survive without it, or something like it added that particular complex mechanism. You have no missing links. Oh, eventually it'll be found. In 150 years, nothing, not even a hint. That tool may be effective in some circles, of course, but the scientific community will be quick to recognize it for what it really is. But you're not doing anything scientific to explain your point. The classic argument from ignorance, dressed up in the shiny cloth of biochemistry and information theory. Yep, see, insult me and you win the argument? Really? So, you state that creation is wonderfully complex and so far beyond your comprehension to explain in detail, species by species. How does that rule out an intelligent designer? You can't explain it, so somebody more intelligent than you had something to do with it. Wow. He goes on to say, when three leading advocates of intelligent design were recently given a chance to make their case in an issue of Natural History magazine, they each concluded their articles with a plea for design. One wrote that we should recognize the design inherent in life and the universe. Well, there is one. Another, that design remains a possibility. Yes, you haven't actually refuted the intelligence behind anything in the universe. You just said, well, this came into that accidentally or billions of years later, long after the universe has ceased to exist, because of the time it takes and the probability when you actually go in the scientific approach and use probability estimates, how long it would take for all that matter, those tiny little pieces of that complex engine in the flagellum bacteria, to all be there at the right time, the right place, precisely in place for it to happen, that species becomes what it is that we see in the microscope today. And another, that he goes on to say that natural sciences need to leave room for design. Yes, it is true. Okay, he does admit that. Design does remain a possibility, but not the type of intelligent design of which they speak. What are we speaking about? Intelligent design. Oh, it is true, but not that kind. Well, what kind? He won't say. He's evasive. Being evasive in your speech means you don't have a clue. I go, why not? Can you prove there is not an intelligent designer of some sort until you can explain evolution a bit better? As Darwin wrote, he says, there is grandeur in an evolutionary view of life, a grandeur that is there for all to see, regardless of their philosophical views on the meaning and purpose of life. Wow. Just talking nonsense. Creationists and the Bible itself, go back down, have a wonder about the marvelous creation that appears before them. They consider it so incredible that there must be some marvelous creator responsible for its beauty and unfathomable complexity, and who is responsible for a solution for all of the deaths and disasters that nevertheless have occurred throughout the ages. The solution is quite plausible if there is an intelligent designer. So far, evolution has not promised an offer for this solution. Not for a few years, for over 150 years. They just say the same thing over and over and over again. I don't know. Now they can't find a missing link. So he goes, I do not believe even for an instant that Darwin's vision has weakened or diminished the sense of wonder and awe that one should feel